The other shrugged. The operating floor went silent before the shouting started. Two surgeons stood over an open chest, arguing about protocol while the new nurse adjusted suction without being asked. No one had learned her name yet. She moved carefully, quietly, like someone trying not to take up space. Then the elevators locked. A ripple of confusion moved through the hallway. Security radios crackled. The other shrugged. Security radios crackled. The intercom failed mid-sentence. The surgeons scoffed when she asked for a temporary pause. They did not see the man in a dark suit, stepping off the restricted elevator. They did not see him scan the room. They only heard him say, calm and direct, ma'am. And in that moment, they realized they had misjudged the wrong person. And in that moment, they realized they had misjudged the wrong person. The other shrugged. The surgical floor functioned on hierarchy. It was not written on the walls, but everyone felt it the moment they stepped off the elevator. Attendings at the top, fellows just beneath. The other shrugged. Residents moving quickly, trying to be invisible. Nurses efficient, competent, expected to anticipate, but never override. The other shrugged. The operating suite that morning carried a particular tension. Room 3 was scheduled for a complex cardiothoracic reconstruction. 6 hours minimum, high blood loss risk, fragile armigines. The kind of case senior surgeons used to reinforce reputation. Dr. Keller stood at the scrub sink, elbows high, voice steady but sharp. I want perfusion primed before we wheel him in, he said. No improvisation, no delays. Across from him, Dr. Shah adjusted his mask. Anesthesia confirmed pressure stability. Yes, Keller replied. If anything drifts, I want it corrected immediately. No lag. The new nurse stepped in quietly. Her badge read, Elena Ward, RN. No additional credentials displayed. No specialty pins. No decorations. The other shrugged. Her scrubs were pressed. Her hair secured tightly at the base of her neck. No loose strands. No visible jewelry. She moved to the instrument table without introducing herself. She checked the layout once, then again. Not rearranging, just confirming alignment. Dr. Keller glanced over his shoulder. The other shrugged. You're the transfer? He asked. Yes, doctor. How long have you been in cardiothoracic? Long enough. Shah gave a faint smile behind his mask. We prefer specifics. She met his eyes briefly. The other shrugged. 4 in critical support. Here? Keller asked. No. That was all she offered. Keller turned back to the sink. Just keep up. This isn't a teaching case. Just keep up. This isn't a teaching case. I understand. Her tone did not change. Inside the operating room, monitors blinked awake. Stainless steel reflected fluorescent light. The air carried the faint sterile scent of chlorhexidine and cold metal. She walked the perimeter of the room once, hands clasped lightly behind her back. Counting outlets. Verifying suction ports. Confirming crash cart placement. No one asked her to do it. She did it anyway. An anesthesiologist entered, reviewing notes on a tablet. Pressures soft but stable. Will titrate is needed. Elena nodded once, eyes on the ventilator tubing. The patient was wheeled in at 7:12 a.m. Mid-60s, coronary complications layered over prior surgical trauma. Fragile but conscious, his eyes moved between masked faces, searching for something human. She stepped to his side as the bed locked into position. I'll stay with you until you're asleep, she said quietly. He focused on her voice. It was not warm, it was steady. That was enough. Anesthesia. Began induction. Numbers shifted across the monitor. Oxygen saturation dipped, then corrected. Dr. Keller stepped forward. Scalpel. The first incision was precise. The room narrowed to the operative field. Elena tracked everything, not just the instruments. Breathing rhythms. Micro-delays in response. Breathing rhythms. Micro-delays in response. The slight tremor in a resident's left hand. The angle of the overhead light casting a shadow too close to the sternum. She adjusted the light without speaking. Shah noticed. Already correcting us? He asked. Preventing glare, she replied. He said nothing further. The surgery progressed methodically. Sternotomy complete. Retraction steady. Suction maintained. At 90 minutes in, perfusion flow fluctuated. Small, barely perceptible. The perfusionist hesitated before adjusting. Elena's eyes shifted to the arterial line monitor. Flow variance 0.3, she said calmly. The perfusionist corrected immediately. Dr. Keller glanced up. I saw it, he said. I know, she replied. Silence returned. 2 hours in, A supply runner entered with a tray that had not been requested. Elena's gaze sharpened. "Who sent that?" she asked. The runner paused. "Central Supply." "We didn't request additional sutures," she said. Dr. Shah frowned. "We might need them." "We logged enough for contingency," she answered. The runner shifted. It was marked urgent. Elena stepped closer, examining the tag. No department signature, just a printed code. She handed the tray back. "Confirm the order before re-entry," she said. "Dr. Printed code?" Keller exhaled slowly. "We don't have time for inventory paranoia. She met his eyes briefly. "We don't have time for uncertainty either." The runner left. Shah looked at Keller, first weak nerves. "Probably," Keller agreed. Elena returned her attention to the operative field. Her breathing never changed. At 10:03 a.m., the overhead page system crackled. A half announcement cut off mid-sentence. Static replaced it. The anesthesiologist glanced up. "That's new." "It has been patching lines," Keller muttered. Elena did not look up, but she listened. A subtle shift in hallway noise. Footsteps. Heavier than routine. Measured. She counted them unconsciously. 3. Pause. 2 more. Not staff cadence. She continued passing instruments. Retractor. Cardiopulmonary bypass engaged. The patient's chest cavity opened wider. Heart exposed under controlled stillness. Outside the OR, voices lowered. A security radio crackled. Elena's eyes flicked toward the door for less than a second. Then back to the field. Dr. Shah noticed the glance. "Focus," he said quietly. "I am," she replied. A bead of sweat slid down a resident's temple. The bypass pressure dipped again. Elena leaned slightly toward perfusion. "Anticipate drop on rewarming," she said. The perfusionist adjusted preemptively. "Doctor," Keller paused. "How did you—" "Pattern," she answered. He returned to the incision. At 11:14 a.m., the elevator at the end of the surgical corridor locked. No chime. Security override? The charge nurse outside tried her badge twice. Nothing. She frowned and stepped away to call facilities. Inside the OR, no one knew yet. Except Elena. She had seen the reflection in the glass panel of the door. The hallway light had shifted. Movement where there should have been none. She passed a suture needle to Dr. Shah. "Your tension is drifting," she said quietly. He adjusted immediately. "Thank you." He adjusted immediately. "Thank you," he muttered. It was the first acknowledgement. A soft knock sounded at the OR door. Not urgent. Measured. The circulating nurse moved to answer. "I'll check," she said. Keller did not look up. "Make it feft." Bashed. She opened the door a controlled distance. A man stood in the hallway. Dark suit. No hospital badge visible. His posture was straight but unaggressive. His eyes assessed the room in a single sweep. Is Dr. Ben aggressive? His eyes assessed the room in a single sweep. Is Dr. Den aggressive? Keller available? He asked. Mid-posture, she replied. I'm aware. His gaze settled on her. May I speak with the attending? Not now. There was no hostility in her tone. Not now. Just fact. He studied her face for a second longer than necessary. Then he nodded once. I'll wait. She closed the door gently. Return to position. Vendor? Shah asked. No, she replied. Then who? The surgery continued. Heart repaired. Flow restored. Gradual warming initiated. Vitals stabilizing. At 12:02 p.m., as they prepared to close, the door opened again, this time with clearance. The man in the suit stepped inside. No one had authorized it. Security had not announced him. Dr. Keller looked up sharply. This is a sterile field. He snapped. The man stopped at the threshold. I understand, he said calmly. I won't interfere. You already are. The man's eyes shifted, past Keller, past Shah, to Elena. A subtle recognition passed between them. Dr. Shah noticed. Who exactly are you? He demanded. The man did not break eye contact with her. Federal Liaison, he said evenly. The other shrugged. We have a developing security concern tied to a patient on this floor. Keller scoffed. Then take it up with administration. We will. Silence stretched. The heart rhythm on the monitor remained steady. Elena spoke without raising her voice. Is the threat immediate? The man answered her. Not the surgeons. Potentially. Keller stiffened. Excuse me. Keller stiffened. Excuse me. I'm leading this procedure. The Ella did not look at him. Perimeter, she asked. Unstable. the liaison replied. Internal breach, unscope. The liaison replied. Internal breach, unknown. Diella, he said sharply, reading her badge. Return to your assignment. I am, she replied. She turned back to the field. Closing sequence, she said calmly. No delays. The other shrugged. Reduce room traffic. The liaison nodded once. Yes, ma'am. The word landed softly, but it landed. The resident's hands faltered for half a second. Dr. Keller froze. What did you just call her? He asked. The liaison did not repeat himself. He asked. The liaison did not repeat himself. He stepped back toward the door. We'll coordinate outside, he said. Proceed. He left without further explanation. Silence filled the room, heavier than before. The monitors beeped steadily. Sutures continued, but something had shifted. Dr. Shah broke first. Do you know him? He asked. No, she said. Keller's voice was tight. He addressed you. Yes, the patient was transferred to recovery in guarded, but positive condition. As they removed gloves and masks, Keller turned toward her fully for the first time. Let me make something clear, he said. This is a hospital. The other shrugged. Not a federal playground. She met his gaze evenly. I agree. You do not take direction from outside agencies. I didn't. Sure. Crossed his arms. He deferred to you. She removed her cap and disposed of it carefully. That was his decision. Keller stepped closer. If there is something we should know about your background. There isn't, she said. Not a lie. Not fully the truth. Just enough. A commotion echoed faintly down the corridor. The other shrugged. Raised voices. Security boots. The liaison's voice. Controlled but firm. Keller glanced toward the door. This is ridiculous, he muttered. Elena washed her hands slowly, methodically. When she finished, she dried them and adjusted her badge. Just a nurse. On paper. Outside, the elevator unlocked again. Movement resumed. The floor returned to controlled routine. But the surgeons no longer looked at her the same way. They were not convinced. Not yet. But doubt had entered the hierarchy. And doubt, in places like this, was the beginning of reversal. She stepped into the corridor. The liaison stood near the far wall, speaking quietly into an earpiece. He looked up when he saw her. A small nod. Respectful. Contained. No explanation offered. None requested. The other shrugged. Dr. Keller exited behind her. If this escalates, he said, administration will be involved. Yes, she replied. And you will answer questions. I always do. He studied her, searching for insecurity. He found none. The surgical wing hummed back to life around them. Gurneys rolled. Nurses charted. Residents hurried past. Normal. But beneath it, something had shifted into motion. And Elena Ward stood in the center of it, unannounced, unrecognized, and completely aware. By 1:17 p.m., the surgical floor had regained its rhythm. At least on the surface. Post-op transfer completed. ICU notified. Charting underway. The other shrugged. Residents decompressing with forced humor in the staff lounge. But subtle fractures had formed in the routine. Security presence had doubled. 2 uniformed officers now stood near the elevator bank. No one had announced why. Keller exited the scrub room reviewing imaging on his tablet. His irritation had not faded. Overreaction, he muttered to Dr. Shah. Federal paranoia chasing shadows. Shah wasn't convinced. He didn't look like someone chasing shadows. Keller stopped walking. This is a hospital, not an embassy. Behind them, Elena updated post-operative notes with precise, minimal language. The other shrugged. Vitals stable. Drain output within expected range. No arrhythmic events. No commentary. Her pen never hesitated. A faint vibration pulsed against her hip. Not a phone. Not hospital. Issued. She didn't reach for it. Across the corridor, the liaison reappeared. Dark suit. Calm posture. No visible urgency. But tension sat beneath the stillness. He spoke quietly to the charge nurse. Elena finished her note. Then she stood. Dr. Shah noticed immediately. Going somewhere, she moved down the hall with measured pace. Not fast enough to draw attention. Not slow enough to appear casual. As she passed the liaison, he spoke without turning his head. Vehicle flagged 3 blocks out. Confirmed, she asked. Confirmed. Alone. Unclear. They did not stop walking from the nurse's station. The exchange looked like nothing. But the air felt different. From the nurse's station, the exchange looked like nothing. Tighter. Elena entered the ICU step-down unit. The post-op patient remained stable. Monitors steady. Respiratory rhythm controlled. She scanned the room once. Window access sealed. Emergency stairwell at end of corridor. The other shrugged. Blind corner near medication storage. She memorized angles. Her internal clock accelerated. 1:26 p.m. back in the surgical wing. The elevator lights flickered once, then again. Security near the bank straightened instinctively. One officer tapped his radio. Static answered. Dr. Keller stepped out of the consult room. Just as the overhead speakers activated, a sharp electronic tone pierced the hallway. Not the usual paging chime. This one was different. The other shrugged. E-recorded voice followed. Attention. Code Grey. Surgical floor. Lockdown protocol in effect. The hallway froze. A nurse whispered, "Is that a drill?" No one answered. Magnetic locks engaged with audible clicks. Fire doors slid partially into place. The elevator display went dark. Dr. Shah stepped into the corridor. What is happening? Security moved fast now. Everyone remain in assigned areas. One officer ordered. The other shrugged. Dr. Keller's face reddened. We have patients in recovery. They are secure, sir. The liaison stepped into view from the stairwell. Perimeter breach confirmed, he said calmly. The other shrugged. To what extent? Keller demanded. Active threat assessment. The word active changed everything. Elena emerged from ICU at the same moment. Her expression did not shift, but her eyes sharpened. Location, she asked. Ground entrance, the liaison replied. Advancing upward. Advancing upward. Armed. Yes. The hallway noise dropped to silence. Residents exchanged stunned looks. One nurse began breathing too fast. Keller stared at Elena. Why are you the one asking operational questions? He demanded. She didn't answer him. Instead, she looked at the liaison. How many minutes? 4. Maybe less. The second overhead tone sounded. Code Grey. Full lockdown. Somewhere below, a distant metallic bang echoed up the stairwell. Not accidental. Forced. The young resident nearest the door swallowed hard. Is that gunfire? Yet. Elena stepped toward the nurse's station. Seal medication access. Clear hallways. Move non-essential staff into interior rooms. Doctor. Keller snapped. You are not in command. She turned to him fully. And for the first time her voice changed. Not louder. Sharper. Doctor. You can either assist me or step aside. The room felt the shift instantly. Authority without theatrics. Shah looked at Keller. Keller hesitated. That half-second decided it. Elena turned to the liaison. Status of local response. En route. 3 minutes out. Too long, she said. The other shrugged. Another metallic crash echoed. Closer. Security near the stairwell drew their sidearms. The charge nurse whispered, This can't be real. It was. Elena reached to her badge. Pressed once, but somewhere outside the hospital. A silent acknowledgement transmitted. The liaison noticed. You activated it. Yes. Keller's voice was tight. Activated it. What? She ignored the question. Instead, she moved toward the stairwell door. The liaison blocked her path. Negative. We contain. You contain. She corrected. I intercept. His jaw tightened. You're not cleared for. She spoke 2 words. Soft. Controlled. The other shrugged. Alpha protocol. The hallway went still. The liaison's posture changed immediately. Not confusion. Recognition. Yes, ma'am, he replied. The nurse behind the desk dropped a clipboard. Dr. Shah whispered. What does that mean? The liaison stepped aside. It means, he said quietly, this floor just became federal jurisdiction. Keller stared at Elena. Who are you? Footsteps pounded up the stairwell. Heavy. Intentional. Security braced. The handle on the stairwell door rattled violently, then slammed. The first shot fired, muffled through reinforced glass, but unmistakable. Screams erupted down the corridor. Screams erupted down the corridor. Elena's face remained still. She turned to the liaison. Evac Route B. Sealed. Route C. Compromised. She nodded once. Then we hold here. Another gunshot. Glass shattered in the stairwell window. Security returned fire. Chaos threatened to swallow the floor. Elena stepped forward. Not running. Not rushing. Just control. The other shrugged. D-movement into crisis. She reached the nearest officer. Fall back 5 feet, she instructed. He hesitated. He hesitated. He hesitated. The other shrugged. The other shrugged. The Olosha complied. Elena positioned herself at the angle between wall and doorframe, minimizing exposure. Her breathing slowed. Measured. Outside the door, boots scraped against concrete. Whoever was advancing knew what they were doing. Not random violence. Deliberate. Calculated. Dr. Keller stood frozen 10 yards back. This is impossible, he whispered. The other shrugged. The stairwell door buckled under another forced strike. Elena's eyes tracked the hinge stress point. On breach, she said calmly. 2-step entry. Expect right-hand sweep. Security exchanged startled glances. How do you? The door exploded inward. Exactly 2 figures moved through. Right-hand sweep. Weapons raised. Elena moved before the second step completed. Not reckless, the other shrugged. Efficient. The first intruder's aim deflected as security tackled from the left. The second attempted pivot. Too slow. The liaison closed distance fast. The struggle was violent but brief. 2 assailants subdued. Weapons kicked away. Shouts echoed through the stairwell below. Others retreating. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Police arrival. Elena stepped back immediately, returning to stillness as if nothing had occurred. The liaison secured cuffs. The liaison secured cuffs. The liaison secured cuffs. Floor secure. He confirmed into his earpiece. Security officers stared at her. Dr. Shah approached slowly. The other shrugged. You predicted their entry angle. Yes. How? She looked at him evenly. Training. Keller's voice shook. Not from fear now, but something else. Training where? She adjusted her gloves. Not here. Police flooded the lower levels within minutes. The threat dispersed. No casualties on the surgical floor. Minor injuries in the lobby. Containment successful. But word spread quickly. Whispers moved faster than sirens. The new nurse. She gave orders. Federal jurisdiction. In the aftermath, she gave orders. Federal jurisdiction. In the aftermath, administration rushed in. Faces pale. Suits disheveled. What happened? The chief medical officer demanded. The liaison spoke before anyone else could. Threat neutralized. Minimal disruption to patient care. The CMO turned to Elena. And you are? Registered nurse, she replied. He looked unconvinced. Keller finally spoke. She initiated operational response. The words tasted unfamiliar coming from him, the liaison added quietly. She prevented escalation. Silence. The CMO studied her carefully. Is there something we should know? She held his gaze. No. Sirens faded. Officers escorted the subdued attackers downstairs. Reporters began gathering outside. Inside, the surgical floor tried to breathe again. Elena removed her gloves and disposed of them. Her movements returned to hospital rhythm. Routine. As if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. But everything had. Dr. Shah approached her privately. That wasn't hospital language. No. You have done this before. Yes. Today, she said calmly. I'm the nurse who kept your floor intact. He had no answer for that. Down the hall, the liaison received a final transmission. He walked toward her one last time. The extraction team standing by, he murmured. Negative, she said quietly. Your cover's compromised. Not fully. A pause. You saved lives, he said. So did they, she replied, nodding toward the surgical team. He gave a short nod of respect. Understood. He left with thou. Understood. He left with thou. The other shrugged. Ute. Further argument. The lockdown lifted at 2:03 p.m. Doors unlocked. Elevators reactivated. Normal resumed. But the hierarchy had shifted permanently. Whispers followed her as she walked back toward ICU. Not fear. Not quite admiration. Something closer to realization. The quiet nurse was no longer underestimated. And somewhere beyond the hospital walls, someone realized she was still inside. The hospital tried to return to normal. The other shrugged. It did not succeed. By late afternoon, the corridors were operational again. Floors cleaned. Broken glass replaced. Incident reports filed into sealed digital folders marked restricted access. But something invisible lingered. Recognition. Not public. Not announced. But present. Elena washed her hands at the scrub sink as if nothing had occurred. Methodical. 20 seconds. Rinse. Dry. Across the hall, 2 residents whispered while pretending to review charts. That was her. I thought she was new. The other shrugged. Inside ICU stepped down. The protected patient remained sedated. Stable. Monitored. She checked the IV line. Adjusted a drip by a fraction. Listened to the ventilator rhythm. Her breathing matched its cadence. Steady. Outside the unit, additional federal personnel had positioned discreetly. No marked jackets. No visible weapons. But their posture was unmistakable. The FBI liaison returned at 4:10 p.m. No rush. No visible alarm. He waited until she finished documenting vitals before speaking. 2 more detained downtown, he said quietly. She nodded. Downtown, he said quietly. She nodded. Affiliation. Organized contract attempt. Target confirmed. Inside support, she asked. Still investigating. That possibility did not surprise her. Hospitals were porous systems. Hundreds of daily entries. Temporary contractors. Dell, ivory vendors. Maintenance. Human error was always the weakest link. Your name surfaced in preliminary debrief, he added. The other shrugged. Remove it. That's not entirely possible. She closed the chart slowly. Minimize it? He studied her for a moment. You understand what happens next? Yes. Federal inquiry. Aye. She met his eyes evenly. Then I'll answer carefully. You could transfer. No. A firm answer. Why not? He asked. She glanced through the ICU glass toward the patient. Because leaving now confirms suspicion. He considered that. The other shrugged. You're staying in proximity to a federal target. I'm staying because this is my assignment. Not defensive, just precise. The liaison exhaled slowly. You're aware that visibility increases risk. Understood, he said finally. He left without further argument. At 6 p.m., administration called an emergency debrief. Conference room B. The other shrugged. All surgical staff present. The chief medical officer stood at the head of the table, exhaustion lining his face. The other shrugged. We experienced a coordinated breach attempt this afternoon, he began. Law enforcement confirms the incident was targeted and contained. Eyes shifted toward Elena. He continued. There will be no media statements beyond official press releases. All staff are to refrain from commentary. A pause. Questions. Dr. Keller raised his hand. Yes, the CMO said. The other shrugged. I would like clarification on chain of command during the incident. The room grew still. The CMO's gaze drifted toward Elena before returning to Keller. The other shrugged. Federal authorities assumed jurisdiction, he replied. That's not what I meant. Silence thickened. Keller pressed forward. Operational decisions were made on the floor. I want to understand by whom. All eyes turned up. Enley now. Elena did not look up. She reviewed her notes calmly. The CMO cleared his throat. The other shrugged. The other shrugged. Collaborative response between hospital security and medical staff. That's vague, Keller said. It is sufficient, the CMO replied firmly. The meeting ended shortly after, but Keller did not leave. He waited until most staff had exited. Then he approached her. You anticipated their movement, he said quietly. Yes. You gave federal instruction. Yes, the other shrugged. I need to know whether my operating room is being used as part of something I don't understand. Her response came without hesitation. Your operating room was used for surgery today. Nothing more. That's not what I saw. You saw containment. He stepped closer. I saw command. A long pause followed. She met his gaze directly. Then you saw what was necessary. He searched her expression for something. Ego, pride, satisfaction. There was none. Only composure. He nodded once. Very well. The other shrugged. Night settled slowly over the hospital. Media vans parked beyond the perimeter. News headlines scrolled across local networks. Attempted armed intrusion at Metro Medical Center. No mention of names. No mention of her. She remained on shift until midnight. Routine rounds, medication checks, quiet reassurances to anxious patients. In room 312, a cardiac patient gripped her wrist. Is it safe? He whispered. Yes, she said. He believed her. Because she believed it. At 11:47 p.m., her phone vibrated once. This time she checked it. Encrypted message. 2 words. Secondary risk. Her posture did not change. She finished adjusting the IV line before replying. Details. Al vector possible. She read it twice. Internal vector. Meaning assistance from inside the building. A staff member, or contractor, or someone with badge access. She glanced down the hallway. Night shift nurses laughed quietly at the desk. Security rotated posts. Nothing appeared abnormal. That was the problem. She walked toward the supply closet at the end of the corridor. Entered, closed the door halfway. Dialed the liaison. He answered on the first ring. Explain, she said. Preliminary interrogation indicates access map was provided. Digital. No. Printed. That narrowed it, but surgical rotation packets sometimes included schematic fragments. She closed her eyes briefly. Who had access to rotation packets? Residents? Attending physicians? Administrative coordinators. Time frame, she asked. Within the last week, her first week. She absorbed that without reaction. Any names? She asked. Not yet. She ended the call. Then she stood in silence. Internal betrayal was more dangerous than external force. Because it was trusted proximity. She returned to the nurse's station. Has anyone requested updated floor schematics recently? She asked the charge nurse casually. Facilities, maybe, the nurse replied. Why? Just checking. She logged into the system, pulled access records. Her eyes moved quickly. 3 downloads in the past week. 1 by facilities, 1 by administration, 1 by resident surgical intern. Name: Mark Ellison. First year. Nervous. Overcompensating. She remembered him. Sweetie hands. Excessive questions. He had hovered near the stairwell earlier that afternoon. She checked his shift schedule. Off duty tonight. Apartment located less than a mile away. Her phone vibrated again. Police canvassing unsuccessful. Suspect. Cats, silent. Time mattered. She looked down the hallway once more. If there was an internal collaborator, the target was still upstairs, meaning risk remained active. She approached Dr. Tark, Shah, who was reviewing scans in the reading room. Where is Ellison tonight? She asked. He looked surprised. Mark? Off. Why? The other shrugged. Has he seemed distracted recently? Shah frowned. He's a first year. They're always distracted. Specifically. He thought for a moment. He's been asking about case rotations outside his level. The other shrugged. Access to restricted wins. There it was. Thank you, she said. She left before he could ask more. At 12:18 a.m., she exited through the employee parking structure. No escort. No announcement. Her steps were unhurried. The air outside was cold. She walked toward her car, then paused. Across the structure, a figure leaned against a concrete pillar. Young, hooded sweatshirt. Hands in pockets. He stepped forward when he saw her. Ms. Alvarez, he called softly. She did not flinch. Yes, it was Mark Ellison. His eyes were red. Not from exhaustion, from fear. I didn't know who else to talk to, he said. She said nothing. He swallowed hard. I didn't think anyone would get hurt. There it was. Confession without formal interrogation. She studied him carefully. You gave them access, she said calmly. He nodded. They said it was for documentation. Legal dispute. I needed the money. How much? 10,000. His voice cracked. I thought it was corporate spying. Not this. She stepped closer. Who contacted you? He hesitated. She held his gaze. This is your last opportunity to choose correctly, she said quietly. He exhaled shakily. A man, outside the hospital, said he represented a law firm. Shadeen. He gave one accurate, professional, organized. You realize what you enabled, she said. He nodded rapidly. I'm so sorry. Apologies do not repair risk. Tears formed in his eyes. What happens now? He whispered. She considered him. Young, stupid. She considered him. Young, stupid. But not malicious, the other shrugged. Now, she said, you correct it. If he blinked. How? You cooperate fully. My career is already compromised, she replied evenly. Your integrity can still be salvaged. He looked at the ground, then back at her. I'll tell them everything. She studied him for another long moment, then nodded once. Good. Footsteps echoed behind them. The liaison stepped from shadow. He had followed her. Of course he had. Mark jumped in surprise. You set this up, he asked her. No, she said. This up, he asked her. No, she said. The other shrugged. You did. The liaison addressed Mark calmly. We'll take it from here. As agents approached, Mark looked at her one last time. Why are you helping me? He asked. She answered without hesitation. Because today no one died. That mattered. He was escorted away. No handcuffs visible. Quiet containment. She stood alone in the parking structure for several seconds. The city hummed beyond the hospital walls. She felt the weight of recognition again. Not from staff this time, from federal oversight. Her cover had narrowed. Her presence now documented in multiple reports. That changed timelines. Inside, the surgical floor would resume normal rhythm by morning. But she knew something deeper had shifted. She walked to her car, paused before entering, looked up at the lit windows of the ICU. The protected patient still slept, unaware of the machinery that had moved around him. She drove home without music. The other shrugged. Was necessary. At a red signal, she allowed herself one brief exhale. Not relief. Assessment. Threat contained. Internal vector neutralized. Visibility increased. Mission ongoing. When she reached her apartment, she did not turn on the lights immediately. She stood in the dark, listening. Habit. After several seconds, satisfied, she entered, removed her jacket, placed her badge on the table. Tomorrow she would return as the new nurse. The surgeons would operate. The residents would whisper. Administration would review paperwork. And no one would fully understand the balance that had shifted beneath their floor. She lay down without undressing, eyes open, ceiling silent above her. Recognition carried a cost, and she had just paid the first installment. Morning light filtered through the high windows of the surgical wing. Clean, bright, deceptively calm. By 7:10 a.m. the floor was active again. Elective procedures resumed. Pre-op checklists circulated. Residents moved briskly, eager to prove normalcy had returned. But security had not reduced. Plainclothes officers blended into visitor seating areas. Badge scans triggered half-second delays. The illusion of routine required effort. Elena arrived precisely at 6:45 a.m. Number 1 commented on her entrance. They watched instead. Dr. Keller stood near the scrub board, reviewing the day's schedule. When he noticed her, he held her gaze a moment longer than usual. Not hostility. Measurement, longer than usual. Not hostility. The other shrugged. You're assigned to OR 3, he said evenly. Yes, doctor. Valve replacement. Complex case. I have reviewed the chart. He paused. The other shrugged. You anticipate complications? I anticipate variables, she replied. A faint shift passed through his expression. Good. It was the closest thing to acknowledgement she had received. At 8:02 a.m., the protected patient remained in ICU. Stable enough for potential transfer within 48 hours. That timeline created vulnerability. Transport corridors. Elevator timing. Public exposure. She ran those calculations silently while preparing the sterile field. Dr. Shah entered first, then Keller. Anesthesiology followed. The rhythm resumed. Incision. Retraction. Controlled suction. The other shrugged. Monitors steady. Mid-procedure. A quiet knock sounded at the OR access door. Unusual. The circulating nurse stepped aside. The FBI liaison entered, masked but unmistakable. He did not speak immediately. He waited. Respecting sterile boundaries. Dr. Keller glanced up irritably. This is not the time. It is, the liaison said calmly. Step outside. Keller bristled. The other shrugged. I will not leave an open chest. I'm not asking you to. The liaison's eyes shifted to Elena. A subtle exchange. Dr. Shah noticed it. What's happening? He asked. The liaison addressed the room evenly. Credible intelligence indicates a secondary attempt may coincide with patient transfer scheduling. The suction hummed softly. Heart rate steady. Keller's jaw tightened. Then increase perimeter. Heart rate steady. Keller's jaw tightened. Then increase perimeter. Do not disrupt surgery. That depends, the liaison replied. On what? Keller demanded. He turned fully toward Elena. On her assessment. The words landed heavily. In an operating room led by 2 senior surgeons, the suction paused. Dr. Shah's eyes moved from the liaison to Elena. Keller's voice dropped. Explain. Too unaccounted for, the liaison replied. Inside knowledge? Likely. Transfer window leaked? Possibly. She adjusted a clamp. Heart rhythm unchanged. Then this is not a perimeter issue, she said quietly. It is timing. Keller's patience thinned. You suggesting what? She finally looked up. If they anticipate transfer within 48 hours, They will not strike randomly. They will wait for movement. And, Keller pressed, then we alter movement. The liaison nodded once. The TARs, he said. She returned her focus to the open surgical field. We advance transfer by 12 hours. Shah frowned. That's medically aggressive. It is, she agreed. Risk increases. So does survivability, she said calmly. Keller studied her. You're making a medical call now. I'm making a risk-balancing call. The other shrugged. Monitors beeped in steady rhythm. The liaison spoke carefully. The other shrugged. If transfer accelerates, we can compress exposure window. Keller exhaled sharply. And if the patient destabilizes during premature movement, I will assume that responsibility, she said. The sentence carried no drama. Only weight. Keller's eyes narrowed. You are... Yes. You do not assume surgical risk. Tele I do. Silence settled. Shah broke it. What does the data show? Cardiac output stable. No arrhythmia for 16 hours. Oxygenation sustained. Transfer feasible under controlled parameters. Keller searched her face, looking for hesitation. There was none. The liaison waited, not interrupting, not pressuring, deferring. Finally, Keller nodded once. Proceed. The word shifted hierarchy again. Not permanently. Keller nodded once. Proceed. The word shifted hierarchy again. Not permanently, but visibly. Transfer planning began immediately. Security recalibrated corridor control. Elevator access restricted to one shaft. Public announcement avoided. Inside ICU, Elena reviewed ventilator settings. One more time. The patient's wife stood near the bed. Anxious. Is something wrong? She asked. No. Elena replied gently. We're moving him sooner than expected. Is that safe? Yes. She held the woman's gaze until belief formed. Outside the room, the liaison approached. You're compressing their window, he said quietly. Yes. If they move early, they reveal themselves. And if they don't, then we remove their opportunity. Then we remove their opportunity. He studied her. You understand this may escalate. I do. He lowered his voice further. Your visibility inside this hospital is no longer minimal. I'm aware. Your cover is functional, she said evenly. For now. A beat passed. You're certain you want to continue embedded? He asked. Yes, no doubt. He nodded once. Understood. At 11:40 a.m., transfer initiated. 2 security agents positioned ahead, one behind. Elena walked beside the gurney. Dr. Shah accompanied. Keller observed from ICU threshold. The elevator opened without delay. Doors closed. Descent silent. No alarms, no interference. On the first floor, Corridor B cleared in advance. As they turned toward the secured transport bay, a maintenance cart blocked partial passage. Unscheduled, Elena stopped walking. The gurney halted instantly. What? Shah asked. She scanned the cart. Toolbox open. Uniformed maintenance worker kneeling beside it. Head down. Too still. Name? She asked calmly. The man looked up. Blank expression. No badge visible. Security reacted a fraction late. The man reached into the toolbox. Elena moved before the motion completed. She pushed the gurney backward sharply. Security lunged forward. A weapon clattered across tile. The assailant subdued within seconds. No discharge. No injury. The wife gasped behind them. Elena steadied the gurney. Continue, she said calmly. Shah stared at her. You saw it? Yes. How? The other shrugged. The liaison arrived moments later. Containment immediate. No media. No chaos. Transfer resumed. Successful. Back on the surgical floor, Keller waited. When she returned, he stood alone near OR3. The other shrugged. You identified the threat before armed response, he said. Yes. You changed transfer timing. Yes. You prevented a discharge in a crowded corridor. The other shrugged. Who trained you? She removed her gloves carefully. Different department, she said. That is not an answer. It is the only one you will receive. He studied her a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He nodded. Not as superior. As acknowledgement. You have my operating room's cooperation, he said quietly. It was not surrender. It was trust. The liaison observed from a distance. Later, In a quieter corridor, he approached her. The other shrugged. "You forced exposure," he said. "Yes," the other shrugged. He paused. "Your authority was visible today. It was necessary. Administration will escalate review. They can. And if they request credentials..." She met his eyes evenly. "You will defer." A faint trace of restrained respect crossed his expression. "Yes, ma'am," he said quietly. Not loud enough for others to hear, but loud enough to confirm. The other shrugged. That evening, hospital leadership convened again. Security upgrades discussed. Transfer protocols revised. No one used her name in official minutes, but everyone knew. The underestimated nurse had altered operational strategy twice in 24 hours, and the FBI liaison had followed her lead openly. Recognition now lived in the open, not declared, but undeniable. Not declared, but undeniable. She finished her shift without ceremony. No applause. No thanks. Only steadier glances. As she placed her badge into her locker, she paused. Authority carried weight. Visibility carried cost. Oath had increased. She closed the locker gently. The floor behind her moved with controlled rhythm again. Patients safe. Threat reduced, but not eliminated. Outside, federal vehicles rotated discreetly. The mission had not ended. It had evolved. And for the first time, the surgeons no longer scoffed. They watched. The day after the open deferral began quietly. At 5:50 a.m., the hospital hummed. At 5:50 a.m., the hospital hummed. At 5:50 a.m. I ceased. Voices had luffed, the other shrugged. Security briefings started earlier than usual. Every elevator shaft, corridor junction, and access badge scanned twice before opening. The other shrugged. Visitors funneled through secondary checkpoints. Staff whispers moved fast, but no one dared question the procedural intensity. Elena arrived with her usual calm. Her eyes scanned the floor, noting subtle changes. Security posts were slightly different. Door access priorities had shifted. Surveillance cameras realigned. Small, almost imperceptible signs of a larger orchestration. She moved to the ICU first. Patient stable, vital signs steady. Her presence was unremarkable. Just another nurse preparing charts. But every action was deliberate. Every observation logged mentally. "Doctor," Keller approached with a folder of new intelligence. He did not speak immediately, only handed it over. Elena opened it quietly. Threat vectors had shifted. Secondary operatives were no longer likely to strike near elevators. They were moving into peripheral hospital wings, aiming for access points most staff ignored. She did not flinch. She calculated. Timing of nurse rotations. Patient transport windows. Security coverage. Timing of nurse rotations, patient transport windows. Security coverage gaps. Visibility patterns, visibility patterns. Her mind mapped routes, faster than anyone realized. By 7:15 a.m., the hospital was active, yet tense. Staff moved with faintly increased awareness, though unaware of the exact reason. Elena coordinated with security, quietly, issuing subtle adjustments. A slight change to corridor patrols. A timing alteration for ore transfers, and a redirection of an internal elevator sequence. No one noticed she had issued commands, and the liaison observed silently, approving each adjustment without interference. At 7:45 a.m., a suspicious maintenance report arrived from a wing 3 floors above. Or 3, the other shrugged. A janitorial staff member had reported an unusual sound in an empty corridor. Security dispatched 2 teams. Elena's eyes narrowed. She anticipated the response, a janitor's cart blocking a corridor. Small, random noises, the pattern of distraction. She moved ahead quietly, unnoticed. Approaching the corridor, she crouched slightly, scanning shadows and corners. Nothing overt. Nothing overt. Every footstep, every movement calculated. And then she saw it, a faint shimmer of tactical footwear behind a storage closet door. Her hand brushed a concealed communication device. She whispered into it, "Confirm clearance." Secondary unit visual. "Yes," came the liaison's muted response. Elena shifted positions, keeping cover while observing the target. This was no random intruder. This was no random intruder. This was precise, deliberate. Someone trained to move unnoticed, to exploit routine. She waited. Silence. The corridor hum faded to an eerie quiet, and then the threat moved. A figure in a security uniform, but the boots gave them away. Tactical grade, laced perfectly. Movements deliberate. He approached the blind corner, fully expecting the corridor to be empty. Elena's hand dropped a small device to the floor. A soft beep, the figure froze. Eyes scanned instinctively, not expecting a trap. By the time he moved again, 2 security agents intercepted him from the sides. The figure resisted B. Doot was quickly contained. No shots fired. No injuries. Elena exhaled slowly, glancing down the corridor. Timing perfect actions. Precise. The liaison appeared silently beside her. They almost hit the blind spot, he said. The other shrugged. I anticipated their route, she replied evenly. They will adjust next time. Yes. That is why we shift again. The tactical shift extended beyond immediate threat response. Elena initiated changes across hospital protocol. Patient transfers staggered unpredictably, or access sequenced non-linearly ROA. Visitor movement subtly redirected, security rotations randomized, everything designed to keep threat vectors off balance. Dr. Keller watched silently from the observation corridor. His respect grew not just for her decisions, but for the clarity with which she executed them. No hesitation, no drama. Pure calculation. The other shrugged. By midday, hospital operations had normalized, but under her influence, every action now carried an extra layer of protection. A meeting was called in the Liaison's makeshift command center. Elena attended. She spoke minimally, offering precise assessments, adjusting strategies. Each adjustment had immediate effect. The team's response efficiency improved visibly. Keller stood back, observing. She doesn't ask permission, he whispered to Dr. Shah. She doesn't need it, Shah replied. The liaison nodded slightly at Elena. Every shift you take, every decision, has recalibrated our risk window. She accepted the acknowledgement silently. No pride. No display. Only quiet competence. Later, in ICU, she checked on the patient's ventilator settings again. The wife lingered anxiously nearby. I noticed your decisions yesterday, she said softly. Elena did not smile. We prevented exposure, she said evenly. That's all. Authority did not require fanfare. By evening, hospital leadership began noticing subtle changes. The previous day's interventions were already paying dividends. Threat analysis indicated fewer intrusion attempts. The other shrugged. Operations had stabilized under the quiet recalibration Elena had implemented. Keller approached her again. This time, he did not speak of procedure. You have changed the game, he said quietly. The other shrugged. I adapted, she replied. Your authority. Functional, she interrupted. For operational purposes only. The liaison arrived. Moments later. He nodded at her subtly. The day ended with no public recognition, no applause, only a subtle shift in how hospital staff regarded her presence. Not overt, but undeniable. She walked out quietly. The corridors still hummed. Patients remained safe, threats recalibrated, and she had shifted the operational floor of the hospital without anyone fully realizing the scope of her influence. Evening fell. The hospital lights dimmed in the wings. Elena paused at the edge of the ICU hallway. Security cameras tracked movement, but they did not know the full extent of the tactical web now in place. She could feel it. Control, subtle yet absolute, had shifted in her hands, and tomorrow the escalation would continue. Night had settled over the hospital, but the quiet was deceptive. The other shrugged. Elena moved through dimly lit corridors. Her footsteps muted against the linoleum. She carried nothing more than a small tablet and a flashlight, yet her presence exuded authority. The other shrugged. The operational floor was calm, but she knew it was temporary. Threats rarely respected calm. The first complication arrived quietly. A subtle anomaly in the surveillance feeds. A maintenance crew scheduled for routine overnight work appeared off sequence. The cameras captured more than they should have. Shadows lingered unnaturally long. Angles shifted. The other shrugged. She noticed the micro-adjustments immediately. The way the crew's movements were slightly too coordinated, too precise. She tapped into the hospital network. Adjusted camera angles. Rerouted security patrols silently. Calculated escape vectors in her mind. Every variable accounted for. At 11:47 p.m., a report came in. A suspicious package left near the elevator shaft. No panic, only procedure. The other shrugged, but Elena recognized it instantly for what it was. The other shrugged, as a distraction. Her mind mapped possibilities. Where attention would shift, which corridors would empty. How staff would respond, She moved toward the package, keeping a natural gait, unhurried, almost casual. The other shrugged. The hospital was a stage, and she moved through it with invisible control. By the time she reached the location, a security team had arrived. She indicated a subtle hand motion directing them to contain the area while she inspected the package visually, noting the faint weight and unremarkable shape. No immediate threat detected, but she did not dismiss it. The other shrugged. It's staged, she said quietly to the team. Secondary activity imminent. Minutes later, alarms triggered on the east wing. Smoke detectors had gone off, signaling an unexpected fire hazard. The hospital activated protocols. The other shrugged. Staff moved with urgency. Patients transferred along pre-planned alternate routes. Elena's mind ran faster than anyone else's. She divided focus. Confirming real threat versus false alarm. Coordinating patient transfers. Adjusting security coverage. Anticipating the intruder's secondary moves. A subtle pattern emerged. The smoke was not accidental. It was a signal, a diversion designed to test response protocols. She tracked the source silently, crouching behind a maintenance doorway. Shadows moved in tandem with the alarm. Tactical. Operators, likely observing the floor through insider intel, attempted to exploit chaos. Elena's hand brushed her tablet. She activated a silent lock on key doors, rerouted elevator access, and triggered internal alert signals only visible to trained personnel. The intruders hesitated. Their expected window had closed. The other shrugged. By 12:15 a.m., the first real confrontation began. A group of intruders attempted entry into ICU through a service corridor. Elena had anticipated it. She positioned herself strategically, unseen with security agents flanking every exit. The corridor felt like a gauntlet. She allowed them to advance slightly, letting their movements reveal intent. The other shrugged. Each step calculated, each misstep leveraged. When one reached a blind corner, she deployed a silent tactical restraint. No gunfire, no commotion, only precision and control. The others froze, caught between her unseen presence and the security perimeter. One spoke into a concealed device. Elena interpreted the command silently. Secondary units were inbound. They would attempt to breach from OR2 in less than 10 minutes. She adjusted immediately. Patched internal communications to reroute OR transfers. Reassigned security quietly. Closed secondary doors without detection. In the chaos, a complication emerged. An ICU patient needed urgent intervention. A ventilator malfunctioned, alarms shrilling above the tactical operations. She moved with composed efficiency, adjusting the ventilator manually, stabilizing the patient while maintaining awareness. The other shrugged. Of the intruder positions, her hands moved quickly, precise, confident. Security noticed the calm authority she displayed amidst rising tension. The liaison, monitoring remotely, nodded subtly. Complication managed, he whispered into his earpiece. Elena responded silently with a nod, even though no one could see it. The other shrugged. By 12:45 a.m., the situation escalated further. Threats had regrouped, moving through peripheral corridors, attempting multiple diversions simultaneously. Elena's response was methodical. Split focus across multiple vectors delegated microtasks to security. Without direct commands, maintained patient care continuity. Anticipated next intruder moves her ability to control multiple streams of activity simultaneously. The other shrugged, revealed a level of competence unnoticed by anyone outside of the liaison and a few security heads. The hospital, which had seemed vulnerable, now operated like a precise machine. Midnight turned into early morning. The other shrugged. Exhaustion threatened those around her. Security agents worked tirelessly, staff followed protocols. Patients remained safe. Elena, however, showed no signs of fatigue. She moved silently to the OR hallway. Two masked intruders attempted to exploit a momentary gap. Elena anticipated it. The other shrugged, a subtle shift in her stance, a slight hand gesture to the nearest agent, and the corridor was sealed. The intruders were intercepted quietly, efficiently. The other shrugged. Her calm presence had become a force multiplier. The building was silent, except for faint beeping of monitoring equipment and distant ventilation. The liaison approached silently. They are adjusting tactics, he said. They will keep adjusting, she replied evenly. They are adjusting tactics, he said. Do you think we can hold them? Yes. If we maintain control and anticipate every escalation, she said. Her words were calm, almost understated, but carried the weight of authority. By 3 a.m., The hospital had stabilized. The other shrugged. Intruders had been contained. Diversions neutralized. Patients safe. Operations normalized. Staff remained unaware of the near misses they had endured. Dr. Keller observed from a safe distance. He had begun to understand the depth of her tactical acumen. Not just nursing competence, but strategic foresight, silent authority and calculated restraint. The other shrugged. The liaison quietly debriefed her, noting adjustments made and potential future threat patterns. Elena absorbed everything silently, committing mental notes for the next escalation. The other shrugged. Her calm exterior never faltered, but internally she mapped every possible complication that could arise tomorrow, the day after, and the days beyond. The hospital finally settled into a semblance of night quiet. Staff rested. Patients stabilized and security maintained silent vigilance. Elena walked the corridors once more, checking each access point, each vulnerable area, each patient room. She paused in front of ICU, observing monitors. Nothing had been overlooked. Her mind already shifted forward. Tomorrow, threats would try again, and she would be ready. Authority had been asserted quietly, complications managed flawlessly, and escalation had been met with control rather than panic. The night ended with subtle dominance. No recognition, no applause, only a hospital that functioned with her silent influence guiding every critical decision. By dawn, the operational floor had been transformed. Staff noticed the subtle difference but could not articulate it. Patients remained secure. Threats neutralized. Elena had escalated the hospital's defense way. The other shrugged, without anyone truly knowing the scale of her influence. Quiet competence. Restraint. Moral tension maintained. Control retained. The other shrugged. Elena paused briefly, inhaling slowly. The battle of the night was over, but the war for control and preparedness was far from complete. The other shrugged. She straightened, adjusted her uniform, and moved forward. The hospital was quiet now, but the calm was fragile. Elena knew that in crises, true authority was measured not just by competence, but by choices made under moral pressure. An alert flickered on her tablet. An alert flickered on her tablet. A patient. Critical. Unstable. Required immediate intervention. Simultaneously, the East Wing security feed showed multiple intruders regrouping, preparing to exploit any lapse. She froze only briefly, weighing options. Every second counted. Choice 1. Personally intervene with the patient, risking exposure, and leaving the intruders a window to strike. Choice 2. Delegate care, maintain tactical control, potentially endangering the patient. The other shrugged. Her mind calculated probability vectors. She considered patient survival rates, the number of staff available, and intruder intentions. The moral calculus was ruthless but necessary. Without hesitation, Elena made her move. She would do both. She signaled to Nurse Patel to stabilize the patient temporarily, while she moved toward the East Wing. The other shrugged. Patel followed instructions silently, her trust absolute. Elena sprinted through service corridors, ducking under low ceilings, passing security checkpoints she had previously configured for rapid access. The other shrugged. Every movement was deliberate, efficient, controlled. She arrived at a junction where intruders had planted a small tactical device, a concealed surveillance instrument designed to relay movements. Elena paused as, assessing, remove it, destroy it, or bypass. Each choice carried a cost. The other shrugged. Removal risked exposure. Bypass could allow intruders to anticipate next moves. She opted for a middle path. Deactivate it silently while leaving it undisturbed enough to avoid immediate suspicion. The other shrugged. Fingers moved expertly over the wires, tablets, and access panels. Her calm focus contrasted sharply with the chaos she had just averted. The other shrugged. Meanwhile, in ICU, the patient's condition worsened. Alarms blared intermittently as machines flagged abnormal vitals. Patel's hands shook slightly under stress. Eleanor returned swiftly, checking the patient. She worked silently, hands steady, correcting ventilator misalignments, administering precise medication adjustments. Her mind tracked intruder patterns, hospital staff movements, and patient vitals simultaneously. The other shrugged. Every decision carried a moral weight. A delay in intervention could cost a life. A misstep in controlling intruders could cost many. The other shrugged. Suddenly, a real threat emerged. A masked figure had bypassed a secondary corridor, moving directly toward ICU. Elena reacted instantly. She intercepted him quietly, applying a non-lethal restraint. Her movements were controlled, methodical. No screams, no alarms, only the silent assertion of dominance. The intruder struggled, then froze, recognizing the authority they had underestimated. The other shrugged. Her eyes met his for a brief moment. She understood their intentions. Disruption, testing vulnerabilities, asserting dominance. Elena had anticipated it all. But her choice to act now carried personal risk. Back in the patient room, she completed intervention. The patient stabilized. Nurses exchanged glances of quiet relief, unaware of the full scale of danger. Elena's attention returned to the corridor. More intruders were attempting entry, but her earlier tactical preparations had minimized their window. She made another calculated choice: leave a minor vulnerability intentionally, forcing intruders into a predictable path, sacrifice a small advantage to maintain control over the larger system. This was the essence of moral strategy under pressure: restrained foresight and willingness to bear cost personally rather than letting others pay the price.